Battlefield has a bit of a problem right now, in my opinion. Whether DICE feel the same or anyone else in the community, I don't know. But I feel right now in the Battlefield community that there's a massive divide, and it's a very difficult one to bridge. One player loves the large open maps like we had way back when, with lots of tanks and plane gameplay and that classic Battlefield combined arms feel, packed with a load of team play. Others prefer game modes like Grind, where there is pure chaos and very few, if any, vehicles, infantry only. And then you've got players that look at these certain game modes and maps and think this isn't what their expectation of Battlefield is. And then cosmetics. I know this doesn't directly impact gameplay, but I don't think there could be more of a divide here. Take the two new elites that have just been added to the game, for example, Wilhelm and Hannah. Some people just love how interesting and different they look, and I for one think that these characters definitely add something new and fresh to the cosmetics of the game, and if you can afford to, they're worth buying because they do look different and make you stand out. But on the other hand, certain players really dislike these because they feel that they're not very authentic and they don't feel Battlefield. So how do you win? How can you make interesting cosmetics that players want to buy without taking a few liberties? It seems that players either want something interesting and unique, or they want full hardcore authenticity, which means probably very little variation for the most part. And you could also argue that there really isn't any systems in place in the game that allow you to properly show off cosmetics. There's no weapon inspect feature, nor is the kill cam particularly good at showing off the cosmetics or dog tags of your killer. Even the armory where you buy cosmetics, I think is quite poor at showing off the weapons it wants you to spend your hard-earned money on, because the gun often sticks halfway off the screen and it doesn't even let you fully rotate it, so you can't actually see the whole skin and how it looks. DICE and EA have an almost impossible task on their hands, I think, with Battlefield at the moment, and it can't be understated how difficult it must be to keep all of your players happy when so many of them want different things. And Battlefield, I think, has been a victim of its own success in that regard. I feel that with Battlefield 3, it brought a significant amount of new players to the franchise, some of which may have never played any of the previous classic titles like BF2 2142 and the original BF 1942. And that's great. I mean, more players is good, right? And we have so many players that play Battlefield now, some of which have played the game since the beginning, and some of those who are just picking the franchise up from maybe BF1. And it doesn't matter where you sit on the timeline, I think you've got just as much a voice as the person next to you. But at the moment, DICE has got so many different voices shouting at them, and I think it's almost pulling them apart in so many different directions. Right now, we've got a lot of limited time modes coming into BF5, and then out. Grind, Fortress, even Rush, Squad Conquest, all limited time game modes. Some of them return and some of them probably won't. Just recently, DICE have announced that Domination and Frontlines are being removed from the main Battlefield playlist. Why, you might ask? Well, apparently it's because they've said that not many players are playing those modes, so it makes sense to drop them, at least for the time being. Although I have heard that they might be coming back for a little while with Mercury. And this of course is fine for anyone who doesn't play those game modes, it won't affect them at all. But if those are the sorts of modes that you play a lot of, and I do think some players do, then you're not going to be happy. After all, you bought a product that had these game modes in at launch and now they're gone. Of course, DICE have the stats, the data, and so while some players may say that they play the game mode all the time and don't have any problem matchmaking, DICE will know how many people as a percentage actually play it regularly, and for them to remove those game modes, I think the number has to be quite small. The argument could be made that why does having Frontlines with say 300 players playing it cause any issues? Does it need to be removed? Does it cost anything? Well, perhaps a more streamlined playlist is good for the game overall, and at the end of the day, I think quality over quantity is fair. But you're definitely neglecting those people who loved those game modes and maybe that's all they played, and when those modes are gone, they just don't play the game at all. But the point of this video and the question that I wanted to pose was, can you make a game like Battlefield that pleases the entire player base nowadays? Is it possible? I think it's fair to say that not everyone is going to enjoy every single map or feature that you put into your game. That's just not going to happen, no matter if you're playing COD or PUBG. You can't please everyone, but I think Battlefield's issue is deeper than that, and it comes back to the combined arms thing. Vehicle gameplay, arguably worse than it's been in the past, and while I don't think that's intentional, I do feel as though infantry gameplay has been much more of a focus in the last couple of Battlefield titles, and definitely so in BF5 more than others. I could be wide off the mark here, but for the most part I think that pilots don't enjoy the planes as much as in other titles, and the tanks are a bit hit and miss, maybe a bit underpowered. For sure, you can be successful in a tank, but in BF5 you have to play super defensive, and most people just find that incredibly boring. And when you have all the armour holding back and camping right on the edge of the play zone, just shelling everything, it has a massive detrimental effect on certain game modes, especially game modes like Breakthrough, where the attacking team really need to get that armour on the point to push the infantry off, but they all just hang back because of how weak they are. Part of this is that one assault player is able to carry 3 panzers, dynamite and a heavy anti-tank grenade, and they can all be easily refilled at a support station. And then Recon have got the Boys AT rifle, there are grenade rifles, AT pistols, small anti-tank grenades. There's a lot of AT for a tank to think about apart from other tanks and planes. But there is a deeper problem here. Where is the team play needed to take that tank down? Remember back in BF3 where you could have a Recon player with a softlam and they could laze a tank or a helicopter, but they'd be useless without an engineer with a javelin, because then the engineer could then use that lock to fire a shot at whatever vehicle that was. Now those sort of team play moments were fantastic. I remember doing that kind of thing loads on maps like Firestorm, Caspian Border, Karg Island. But of course, moments like that are really missing from Battlefield 5, and for the most part you can deal with tanks and vehicles on your own without too much trouble. But is this intentional? And of course the setting for Battlefield 5 I don't think helps in this respect. It's probably unfair to compare a modern game's gadgets to that of a World War II shooter, but the setting makes a big difference in how the gameplay can evolve, so you really have to reference it. And I think there are also design choices here that have been made that really lessen the team play. Ammo and health can be obtained from crates around the map, and we can now even take health and ammo directly from players who aren't paying attention. And again, some people love that. It's not as frustrating, but others think that it diminishes team play. Because really, if you think about this, in Battlefield 5, there's not really that many team play moments, is there? I just want you to think for a couple of seconds. In the latest build of Battlefield 5, what team play elements or moments you can think of? For me, the only true team play element of BF5 is reviving. That's one of the only things that you can't do yourself. You don't really need to rely on medics and support players to get health and ammo back anymore, because there are boxes everywhere and you can just run up to them now. And if you're a Recon using a spot flare, then usually you do that for yourself or just to score some points or complete an assignment. But aside from that, there are no proper team play moments like I described in BF3. No one really repairs vehicles anymore. I rarely see transport vehicles being used with full squads inside them. You don't need to rely on squad leader spawns because that isn't a thing anymore. And I think that's a real shame that all of those Battlefield team play moments have just gone now. And when we look at things like map design, the maps in BF5 I think lack a bit of verticality compared even with BF4. Mercury I think does a good job. I love that style of map, but I think most of this is down to the fact that the maps are based on real world locations. We've got small houses, trenches, lots of open fields, whereas in previous games like BF4 you had elevators, verticality, big buildings with multiple floors. Not on every map of course, but on some. Even Hardline I think had some epic verticality on, let's say, Downtown or Hollywood Hills. So is there a solution to this? Well, how about this? What if Battlefield didn't have to cater for 2 different types of players? And instead of creating this game that kind of is a half measure of both, let's say there are 2 games. I'd say that for the most part, with Battlefield at the moment, there are 2 types of players. You've got the players that really enjoy infantry, and you've got those who prefer the classic larger scale Battlefield maps which have that combined arms feel with a nice balance of infantry and vehicle gameplay. So what if there was 2 separate games to cater for both types of players? I know it sounds a bit mad, but would this be better? Is this a better solution? 2 separate Battlefield games, each with a clear focus. One, it's just infantry, and the other one, it's classic Battlefield. Right now you've got a lot of different players that you're trying to keep happy, if that's with attrition, physicality, self-repairing in tanks, crazy cosmetics versus authentic cosmetics. They all cater for different players. So what if there was one Battlefield infantry game that caters to that, and it does away with attrition, physicality, and even vehicles, and this game would be a lot more liberal with authenticity, so you could have some crazy cosmetics while also retaining that authentic Battlefield feel and gunplay. And then you've got an entirely different experience for the other players. The guys that love the classic Battlefield, that thrive on team play and large maps and love the combined arms focus, perhaps a more hardcore game, keeping things like attrition, physicality, more emphasis on team play and those kind of elements. Would that work, and is it even feasible? I suppose the question would be, what would be the point? Well, I think if you separate those games, then you've got way more freedom on how you approach every aspect. How long does it take to capture a flag? How long respawns are? Gun mechanics, recoil, attrition, and in theory, you could change up any aspect you wanted. You could definitely implement some aspects of that by just having a separate playlist, but probably not all of it. I feel as though DICE had an initial vision for BF5, but after the first reveal trailer went down so badly, mainly due to the cosmetics that divided opinion, they had to backtrack a bit. They removed all of the more extreme cosmetic options, and only now they're perhaps slowly introducing some more interesting cosmetics in the form of the elite classes. So I wonder how different the game would have looked today if DICE had stuck with their original vision for the game. The direction of Battlefield has changed a lot since the days of BF2. It's become a lot more infantry focused, with smaller, close-knit game modes being really popular amongst players. And that's not a criticism, by the way. Games evolve, player bases change, it's really just an observation. It's also not a competition. I don't think anyone is right or wrong here. If you love one mode and you hate another, and you love being a lone wolf or you love team play, that's fine. In fact, I imagine there are a lot of players that just really enjoy playing Battlefield because it's got so many different experiences to offer that you can't get anywhere else, and I wouldn't want to take that away from anyone. But I do think though that wherever the next Battlefield game goes, it's got a really difficult job on its hands, and it's going to be so tough on DICE to pick a focus and try and bring everything together. Which direction will it take? Will it be a modern shooter and therefore bring back some team play elements that are missing, or will it just be focused on mainly infantry? It's something that I'm definitely very eager to find out about. But of course, with this being a bit of a debatey type video, I have to say that splitting the franchise into 2 games does have negative effects as well. And you could say, well, hasn't this kind of been tried already with BF Hardline? That was much more infantry focused and it wasn't received very well. Or what about something like Medal of Honor Warfighter? Yes, it's not Battlefield, but it was EA's attempt to bring something that was just focused on infantry, and both of those games just didn't do very well with Battlefield fans. But that was a few years ago now, and the series has definitely changed over time, so would something like this work? Maybe. At the same time, think about this: if you're a developer at DICE, or if you're someone high up in EA, is it really a good idea to split your main FPS franchise into 2 components? It might scream to people that you don't really know what you're doing or what your audience wants, and yes, it would definitely split the entire player base some more. And how do you fund something like this? You'd need an entire extra dev team to put something like this together. So it's not really that realistic, but it's quite fun to think about. And that's all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Leave a like if you liked the video, a dislike if you didn't, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.